Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about a little bit more about equations. This is our part 2. They can be more complicated. You may have to simplify, so you're going to have to use the distributive property, or we're going to have to combine like terms before we start using our inverse operations and isolating our variable. All right, so our first one, this is a graded example. The first thing I'm going to have to do is combine my like terms. I have an 8x plus a 5x, so I'm going to combine these first before I'm going to start moving things. So 8x plus 5x, that's going to give me 12x, right?
13x.
Oh, sorry. 13x minus 21, and I'm just bringing everything else down. So now I'm going to start isolating my variable. So I'm going to actually draw my line for my equal sign, because what I do to one side is what I'm going to do to my other side. So I have a negative 21. How would I get rid of my negative 21? I'm going to add 21 to both sides. So negative 21 plus 21, these are going to give me a 0. I still have my 13x on this side. So negative 15 plus 21, these are opposite signs. I'm going to subtract and keep this sign. So that's going to give me a 6. All right, so now I have one more step. I have 13. This 13 is being multiplied to x. So how do I get rid of my multiplication? I'm going to divide each side by 13. So 13 divided by 13, that's just a 1. So my x is going to equal 6 over 13, and I can just leave it as this fraction. So this would be my answer. Okay, for this one, we're going to have to distribute. If you notice, you have this negative sign right here on the outside of my parentheses. If I don't see anything, this really means there's a negative 1 that's going to be multiplied to everything on the inside of my parentheses. So the first thing I'm going to do is distribute or multiply this negative 1 to everything on the inside. So I still have this 10y out here. I'm going to come back for this later. So negative 1 times my positive 4y gives me negative 4y. And the negative 1 times the positive 8 gives me a negative 8. And I'm going to keep everything on this side. All right, before I start doing inverse operations, again, I have a 10y minus 4y. So I'm going to combine these like terms first to get 1y. So 10y minus 4y, that gives me 6y. And I'm bringing everything down one more time. Now I can solve, now I can isolate my variable. So I'm going to draw my line. Let's get rid of this negative 8 first. So the opposite or the inverse of my negative 8, I'm going to add 8 to both sides. So negative 8 plus 8, bring down your 6y. All right, so negative 20 plus 8, that's going to give me a negative 12. Now this 6 is being multiplied to y, so the inverse of that, I'm just going to divide. And finally, I can simplify this. A negative 12 divided by a positive 6 is going to give me a negative 2. So my y equals a negative 2. All right, again, we're going to distribute one more time. If you notice, this time we actually have a negative 2. So I'm going to take the negative 2 and distribute that to everything on my inside. So negative 2 times by 3 gives me a negative 6. And I'm going to distribute the negative 2 to this negative d. A negative times a negative, that's going to give me a positive 2d, and I bring down everything else. All right, I don't have anything that I can combine, so now we're going to start doing our inverse operations. All right, I have a negative 6, so to get rid of that, the inverse, I'm going to add 6 to both of my sides. Still bring down the 2d. 4 plus 6, that's going to give me a 10. The 2 is being multiplied to d, so the opposite of multiplication is division. 2 divided by 2 is a 1, so I'm left with d equals 10 divided by 2 is a 5. This would be my answer for d. All right, the first thing you're going to do before you can do anything, again, is you're going to distribute. We're going to multiply this 4 to everything on the inside, so 4 times x is 4x. 4 times a negative 2 gives me a negative 8. Let's rewrite the problem, bring everything down. Okay, I notice I have 4x and a 2x, so I'm going to combine my like terms first. 4x plus, don't forget the sign, 2x, that gives me 6x. And I'm going to rewrite my problem. Minus 8 equals a 40. Now I'm going to start doing my inverse operations. I have my negative 8, so I'm going to add 8. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So 6x equals a 48, and then I'm going to divide 6. 48 divided by 6 is 8. So x is equal to my 8. Okay, so this one's a little bit different. We're going to do what we've been doing this first time. First it says if 4a plus 0.2 equals 5, so my step first is I'm going to figure out what the value of a is. Then I'm going to plug it into my other equation. Then they want me to figure out, okay, now that I know a, what would that number minus 1 equal? So we're going to do what we just did first. So 4a plus 0.2 equals 5. So I can't combine any of my terms, so now we can actually do inverses. So I have plus 0.2, so I'm going to subtract from both sides. So that gives me 4a, I'm going to rewrite it, equals 4.8, right? Mm-hmm. All right, 4 times a, so I'm going to divide by a 4 because that's the inverse. So my a would equal 1.2. Now I know what a is, so now my second step is I'm going to find the value of this problem. So I'm going to actually take this value I found, 1.2, and plug it in for a, and now I can subtract 1. So 1.2, which was my a, minus 1, what would that give me? Well, that'd give me 0.2.
So what's the answer to this question?
So my answer is going to be both of these parts, right? No? What?
My answer to the question is 0.2.
Yeah, that's my answer, is 0.2. But you had to find this value first before you could figure out what the 0.2 was, because we didn't know the value of a. Okay, same thing. We're going to do 2 steps, and we're going to actually figure out what the answer to 3 times d would be. First, I got to figure out, okay, well, what is d? So this is my equation that they give me. All right, so if you notice, there's a negative sign outside of the parentheses. Really, this is a negative 1. So I'm going to distribute or multiply this negative 1 to everything on the inside. So I'm going to rewrite my 3d. We'll come back. Negative 1 times a 9, negative 9. And then I'm going to distribute to the second term as well. It goes to everything. So negative 1 times a negative 2 gives me a positive 2d equals 51. All right, I notice I have a 3d and plus 2d. I need to combine my like terms first. So that gives me 5d minus 9 equals 51. I'm going to kind of run out of room here, but that's okay. I'll rewrite it over here. Can you see over here?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I can't combine any like terms, so now we're going to actually start doing the inverse operation. So I have a negative 9, so I would add 9 to both sides. So I'll bring down my 5d equals, this would give me 51 plus 9 is 60. 5 times d, I'm going to divide. 60 divided by 5 is 12. All right, this is not my answer. Now I'm going to actually take this value and plug it into this problem. So it's 3 times d, so it's 3 times what I found the value of d was is 12. So that gives me 36. 36 is my answer. All right, so here we just have a couple of examples or practice problems, and there are the answers right here in red for you, so feel free to pause the video and go through and check.
Slide 1. You can pause and check there. Slide 2.
And we even have a word problem.
Pause and check there.